Springfield's Talk 1041 and a good Tuesday morning. Everyone, welcome to the show. My name is Nick Reed. Streaming live, YouTube. Sponsored by Springfield Raps, designer of the KSGF studio. And yes, this Friday we do have a Heroes Breakfast at Scramblers. This means if you're a veteran, you come by, you're going to get free breakfast as we broadcast live from 6 to 9 a.m., Delta Roofing, Serenity Honors, Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, Scramblers all coming together to buy you breakfast as veterans. And then at 10 a.m., we've got at Local for Less or at KSGF.com or Local for Less Ozarks. These are half-price deal situations. And for only $25, 10 a.m. at KSGF.com this Friday, for $25, you can get $50 gift certificate to Scramblers. That clearly is something that is beneficial to most of you that are listening, whether you are somebody that goes there for lunch after the show on Friday or just during the week, anytime whatsoever. Great place for breakfast and lunch, and you can get a half-price deal. Those will go very quickly, so you may want to keep that top of mind and have that KSGF.com up and ready to go Friday at 10 a.m. Also at KSGF.com, just go ahead and get some of this stuff out of the way early on for you. Casting Crowns is going to be performing at Black Oak Amphitheater Thursday, September 12th. And special guest, Katie Nicole. You can register for your chance to win a pair of tickets by going to KSGF.com for that as well. We will update you coming up on the latest unfoldings regarding the left-wing anti-Semitism that the Democrat Party is having a very, very, very difficult time keeping control of, and it's their own doing. This is a combination of their push for diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is a divide-and-conquer strategy, pitting the oppressed against the oppressors and defining oppressed and oppressor based off of largely skin color. And this is manifesting itself. This is what we're observing this. And in the context of what occurred in the terrorist attack, October 7th, against the Israeli people, and the subsequent activation of these young people in particular that feel empowered through DEI largely to be anti-Semitic. And this is a very important segment of the Democrat voting bloc. And so they don't want to alienate them. But at the same time, when you have your supporters out there on campus calling for the elimination of Jews, calling to finish them off, finish what Hitler started, bring back the good old days of the Holocaust, those good old days. You recognize at the same time that may not be appealing to the average American. And they've painted themselves into a corner here. There is a component to this that I believe has not necessarily been understood. And that is, this is not going to go away on its own. We have been accustomed to young people in particular that will grab onto some cause, largely because they're looking for meaning. They're directionless. They feel empty. This is where virtue signaling comes along so often, because it gives them the ability to feel as if they are part of something and that they're doing something meaningful. But those things usually go away very quickly. You have some cause, people are, all right, we'll give it a week, it'll go away. This is different. This is much, much different. This is not virtue signaling. This is an evil instinct that has been implemented starting in schools at a very young age with these young people. This is who they are. This is not a category of individuals that are rudderless empty vessels that are looking for the quick fix of feeling as if they're doing something meaningful. And here they found the cause of the moment, and eventually something else will catch their attention, like a dog and a squirrel, and then they'll be on to the next thing. That's not who these people are. And I can't help but believe that the Democrats in particular, in their minds, because that is largely their base as well, those young people that are simply looking for some cause to virtue signal over, that they think, well, this will just fade out eventually. This is going to fade out. I think they're in for a very big surprise. And there is a very, very good chance that they're you want to talk about a repeat of history. 1968, Democratic National Convention, Chicago, riots, massive riots. Democrats, 2024, National Convention, Chicago. And people who, you've got a lot of sort of interesting components to this. People who are sympathetic towards Islamic causes, oftentimes dates are very significant to them as well. This is why the attack on Benghazi happened on September 11th, because of September 11th, 2001. Dates are oftentimes important, and so the ability to recreate a Democratic National Convention in Chicago, though the date itself may not be the exact same date from the year of 68, the fact that it is a Democratic National Convention and it's the same location, and so it's that moment, while at the same time they are focusing on the Democrats and their protest. And of course, the reason being is they know that they don't have any chance with Republicans. There's no chance there. They understand where the weakness is. They understand where the sympathies lie. And so I think that there could be some very, very serious implications to all of this coming to a head at that convention. I do also want to play some audio and talk briefly about yesterday's opening of the Stormy Daniels Donald Trump saga, this Allen Bragg trial that is it's in a race for the other trials against Trump for the most absurd. And many legal experts believe, and again, well, they argue that this is the most absurd, most anti-law and order trial of all of those, in which the Biden campaign is attempting to keep Trump off the campaign trail. But just an update on how things went. And, of course, we have so much more this morning. There's an interesting thing before we go to the news here that is playing out in Vernon County. Vernon County is along the Missouri-Kansas border. It is, if you know where Nevada is, if you're headed up north to Kansas City, that's the area of the state. And one of the issues that we've been talking about, and Don Carricker is oftentimes a point person for the conversation, is the desire by a number of central committees, Republican central committees, to make sure citizens who want to run as Republicans are actually Republicans. And the way they've gone about this is having questionnaires regarding the party platform and the issues of the party to see if the person is compliant. And this being because if you are a political party, obviously you want people who actually espouse your vision and your ideals to be, a Republican. You want that person in line with your beliefs. Any party would. It only makes sense. And so in Vernon County, they did this. And evidently I don't know the number of candidates, it may have just been one candidate that did not, and we're going to get the details of this. We're going to talk with someone from Vernon County after 8:30 this morning. Either they did not meet the requirements or they didn't even take the fill out the survey. And the county told the Republican Party, well, we're going to let them run as a Republican anyhow. We're the ones who choose who is going to run as Republicans. You, as the Republican Party, will not make that choice. And so there is a lawsuit that's unfolding there, and we'll get some of the details on that coming up. The Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447 KSGF. Latest news update. First Alert Forecast, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals from Color 10 Fox 49. Meteorologist Tom Schmidt. A 30% chance of rain this afternoon. Otherwise, partly cloudy, high near 75, 47 tonight. Partly sunny, 71 tomorrow. And then Thursday, a 70% chance of showers and thunderstorms with a high near 65. Streaming live, KSGF.com. The so-called hush money trial began yesterday in New York, and I mean, New York is increasingly just, it's becoming hostile to any political opposition. It's hostile to actual justice, and virtually everyone recognizes this. I mean, this is a made-up crime by an individual whom his predecessor and even the Biden Justice Department said there's no crime here. But Bragg ran on getting him, and and so and at one point he too said no, there's no crime here, but then did an about face like, okay, yeah. Jonathan Turley, who of course he's a constitutional scholar, he is also a Democrat, but he is one of those that intellectualism and honesty is first, political affiliation is second. So this puts him as a bit of an outlier with most of the people within the Democrat Party. And he was on Fox News yesterday, and leading into the question or the conversation with Turley was noting that there was some polling done, and it was like 35% of I think it was New Yorkers, or it may have been Americans, think that Trump did something illegal, while 45% believe that he didn't do anything illegal. Some said maybe unethical, but you had more than, you had about 10% more saying he didn't do anything illegal here. But noting that you have 35% of individuals here feel that Trump did something illegal.
Well, that's not unexpected. I think if you poll people and ask if Trump was responsible for the bubonic plague, you'd end up with the same 35%. I mean, we have these hard numbers on either end of the poll when it comes to Trump. They don't move, and no matter what the subject is. What is clear is in this case, Trump is right. I mean, this is an embarrassment. I mean, the fact that we are actually talking about this case being presented in a New York courtroom leaves me in utter disbelief. I mean, the arguments today did, in fact, capture all the problems here. You had this misdemeanor under state law that had run out. This is going back to related to the 2016 election. And they zapped it back into life by alleging that there was a campaign finance violation under the federal laws that doesn't exist. The Department of Justice doesn't view it this way. But on top of that, you've got these tough factual issues that were laid out well by the Trump team, saying someone else designated this as a legal expense, and he was actually paid far in excess of this because of this was a legal account. But also keep in mind, this is what Hillary Clinton's people did. Remember when they funded the Steele dossier, which they denied to reporters, they put it as a legal expense, and then they fought the eventual fine that they received from the federal government, saying, but it was a legal expense. But now you've got some of the same Democrats supporting this bizarre theory.
Now, the latter part of this is a component that doesn't often get mentioned. And in the particular, listen, we're in a world where there is no north, south, east, west. There's no again, consistency and justice is dead in this country. But the reference here to the Clinton campaign and the fact that what occurred there was the payment for that Steele dossier that was used by the FBI to get the FISA courts to allow for spying on Trump world. And it was paid for by the Hillary Clinton people. But they did, when they wrote down as an expense, they said it was for a legal bill. Now, the campaign actually got fined for that by the Federal Elections Commission, FEC. It was like $100 and some thousand they had to pay. What Trump is being accused of is the same scenario, except instead of paying some foreign spy to come up with fake information so that the government could try and interfere and successfully interfere in an election and then overthrow a presidency, he's being accused of doing it in order to make sure that somebody that he allegedly had an affair with didn't talk about it. Now, if we want to talk about which of those two have greater implications in terms of our country, and what is another component to this, if you want to look at the two is the reason that Alvin Bragg claims that this is so important is because it was that Trump was interfering in the election, claiming that, well, if Americans knew that Stormy Daniels claimed that she had a relationship with Trump 20 years ago or whatever, then Trump may not have beat Hillary Clinton, which of course is absurd. But the entire justification is that Trump interfered in the election, that using those dollars to keep her mouth shut and then writing it down as a legal expense was election interference. Now, what's greater election interference? That or what Hillary Clinton paid for? I think we can all agree that paying some foreign spy to come up with some fake dossier that the deep state then uses to spy on a presidential campaign, not to mention while president of the United States, you've got all these investigations going on. You have these conspiracy theories. You have false claims from people like Adam Schiff and others that there was Russian collusion going on. Which of these two do you think really has a greater implication in this country? Hillary Clinton's campaign gets a fine. Donald Trump faces, over 100 years in prison is what they're attempting to go for? This is all part of when Democrats claim that there's no dual justice system in this country. This is what this is what people who are paying attention see and recognize. We're going to take a break. There's one other bit of audio that I want to share with you on this. And it's regarding, just the transparent and blatant political component to this. And the opening, the person who was opening for the prosecution is a former Biden administration official. They don't even try to hide it any longer. Regarding the opening of the dual justice system in New York, Trump, Stormy Daniels trial, Jonathan Turley on Fox News talking about just the patently absurd and frankly, legally speaking, embarrassing component to this, despite the fact that he himself is a Democrat. John Roberts, also of Fox News, getting thoughts from Turley on the fact that this is, they don't even try to hide the political component to this any longer. The guy chosen to open things up for the prosecution here is a former Biden guy.
Well, you can only imagine what Trump was thinking. This is like playing poker with someone with their cards facing outward. I mean, the first person they bring up is the very guy that they got from the Biden Justice Department who's leading this effort. And that only reaffirms and supports this narrative, right, that this is all coordinated. It's a mystery to me why they would do that, except there is a chilling reality here. It doesn't matter. It's New York. That is, if the fact is that most people in most courts would be like, whoa, let's not start with the former Biden justice attorney to make this argument. But in New York, it doesn't matter because not much else matters except the name of the defendant on the caption, Donald Trump.
Turley, he really nails it there, and this is something that has become, it's been a quick evolution over the last several years. It's one thing in a government, in an organization, in a society when there's corruption that occurs, even if you know it. But once it surfaces and it's undeniable and there's targeting for political or personal purposes occurring, if there's if there is a stop put to it, right? Because then you say, all right, well, at least we acknowledge that this is not acceptable behavior. As Turley noted, it doesn't make sense that they would be so brazen about it unless they've just gotten to the point where they don't care. And this is something that I've been arguing for some time, and this is where the real danger is. And all of this came about during the Trump years. Once it was exposed that you had, former current members of the CIA working to rig the election, you had the FBI falsifying evidence before the FISA courts. All of these things, Adam Schiff lying about a smoking gun, the Hillary campaign paying for that Steele dossier that was used by the FBI to spy on the Trump campaign. All of these things, they come out, and what Democrats have realized is that they're untouchable. And the only thing more frightening and dangerous to good people than a corrupt individual is a corrupt individual who realizes that nothing is going to stop them. And that's what's occurring in New York. And that's what's occurring within the Biden administration and the Democrat Party. Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed. First alert forecast, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. 30% chance of rain this afternoon. Otherwise, partly cloudy, high near 75. Partly cloudy tonight, 47. Some sunshine tomorrow, 71. Then we're going to have a front coming in Thursday with a 70% chance of showers and thunderstorms and a high near 65. I want to make one other notation, and it was actually discussed briefly when Jonathan Turley was on Fox News talking about the current trial in New York City that Trump is being tethered to. And we have become very Putin-esque, Banana Republic, however you want to reference it. You know, Trump is the main political opposition, and he's being held up in court, and he's told you cannot leave and go campaign. If you do, we'll throw you in jail. Oh, and by the way, you can't go out and criticize the system. You can't criticize the political opposition who's trying to imprison you, because if so, then you'll be fined or imprisoned. This is the gag order. And now you have, we spoke of this yesterday, Democrats that have submitted legislation that would deny Trump Secret Service protection if they are able to put him in jail, which clearly is in order to make him a prime target to be assassinated. There's no other reason that one would do that. I don't even know that, Putin, at least when he targets political opposition, he's a little more coy about it. I mean, everyone knows, but he's not so brazen to where he just makes it so clear and so obvious that he's almost to the point of bragging about it. And we've seen that, in fact. A couple of weeks ago, Biden at some event joking about Trump needing to, having to raise funds for his bail and so forth. So, I mean, they're joking and bragging about doing what Putin does, but at least I don't know what you would call it. Not smarts necessarily, but Putin's way of going about it is just to be a little more sly. We were accustomed to the Biden campaign 4 years ago keeping him hidden in the basement. And the reason that we largely accepted that to be the case was because of his senility, that when you look back then, he seemed very, very sharp compared to where he is today, though at the time it was clear he had some problems. And so that's why many of us, we just thought, well, it's because they don't want him to talk. They're afraid that he's going to make a fool of himself. And while that to some degree, I believe, was part of the motivating factor, what you also had was the fear of the juxtapositioning of Donald Trump at a rally versus Biden at a rally, and not the personalities so much themselves, but the crowds. This was something that was palatable during the 2016 election, and it was oftentimes noted that the Hillary Clinton events were much, much, much smaller crowds. Trump would talk about this on the campaign trail. He would taunt the media to get shots of his entire crowds, noting that, and he would, challenge them, pointing out the fact that, oh, I see you don't want to show all of these people. And they would do the same for Hillary Clinton because they didn't want to see the lack of people. Hillary Clinton campaign events would involve, having these rooms that were only a tenth of the way full, whether they were small little gymnasiums or whatever the venue was, and then they would encourage or force everyone to get into the lower sections to where the camera could pull back enough to show a crowd but not see the empty seats there. And this is something that, while I think that they did not necessarily, because they just didn't believe Trump was going to win, post-election, hindsight thinking, well, maybe that was hurtful, maybe that was harmful, that imagery in terms of helping create Trump excitement and momentum versus the Hillary Clinton supporters. And so keeping Biden in the basement for the 2020 election perhaps was not so much just about Joe Biden, but it was about trying to avoid the juxtapositioning of a Trump crowd at a rally versus a Biden crowd at a rally. If you notice, yesterday, for example, I believe Biden did 3 campaign stops in Pennsylvania. They are eliminating as best as they can Trump's ability to be out there, which then allows for them not to have to worry about these side-by-side pictures. The side-by-sides that they have created is Joe Biden out there, and yeah, he may be looking feeble, and he may, these events, and they all seem very, very, produced, if you will, and structured, but it's juxtaposed to Donald Trump sitting in a courtroom. And if you listen yesterday to the media, I'm not going to play the audio for you. I just can't stand to listen to it. The Rachel Maddows, all of these, they just talk about, I mean, he just looks like a broken man. He looks like he's defeated. He's hunched over. He looks tired. And so the juxtapositioning that the Biden people have created is one of Biden out there on the campaign trail. Oh, he's out there. But he's able to be out there because it's not side by side with these massive rallies of tens of thousands of people of Donald Trump. And that isn't to say that Donald Trump isn't going to be able to have some of those rallies. He obviously is. He has been having them, but to the degree that he did once before. So now what they're able to do is hand the media the side-by-side events of Joe Biden doing his thing and Donald Trump walking in and out of court. This is all about rigging the election, not just through means in which we're talking about at the ballot box with ballot harvesting and drop boxes, but creating the narrative and the optics of it all. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. A1 Custom Car Care, don't ignore the check engine light. And I just want to note the difference in having a check engine light come on and going to some big box store that sells parts and they say, oh, well, we can, do a diagnostic test for free. And then they're like, oh, this is wrong, versus what occurs if your check engine light comes on. You go to A1 Custom Car Care. It is the difference between having a cough, and you go to one doctor, and that doctor says, yep, you have a cough. And then you go to another doctor, and the other doctor finds out the source of the cough. When you get that offer of a free diagnostics, it oftentimes will just tell you, oh, here's the symptom, but it's not telling you the source of the symptom. Like, oh, well, this part isn't working, but is that part not working because of another part? And so here you buy that part. Maybe you can even put it in yourself, or you have your brother-in-law put it in, but then a week later it goes out again. Well, because that wasn't the source of the problem. But the source is what they find with A1 Custom Car Care. So my recommendation, for the good of your vehicle and your pocketbook, a check engine light, A1 Custom Car Care. Pyramid Roofing Company talk, a text line 447 KSGF. Let's go to James in Springfield. James, welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning, Nick. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Oh, nice.
Appreciate your advice, everything, listening to you in the mornings. And I was listening to you here just a few moments ago talking about possible, assassination of Donald Trump. And it further to beg me to ask this question to you. Like I said, it's my first time calling. So I'm truly confused, Nick. I'm almost 40 years old, lived in Springfield most of all my life, worked here. It's come to the point now that I can't no longer live in Springfield or around Springfield. The cost of living is just excruciatingly gone crazy. Rent, housing, everything. But it goes back to my question with Donald Trump, the assassination attempt. If we can understand that and talk about that, why can't we talk about our options as people? Because I feel, not just me, I mean millions of us feel that our government does not represent us no more. Hence the fact that in the House they can have waving Ukrainian flags to send $60 billion of our. I'm broke, my friend. A lot of us are broke and struggling. Our lives have been turned upside down. So we got kids we raise, and we're trying to see the light at the end of the tunnel. These kids have no light at the end of the tunnel. Hell, we barely got light at the end of our tunnel. Our only chance is of Donald Trump. If Donald Trump doesn't make an assassination, what is left for this country is my question. I mean, do we just go silently into communism, Marxism, totalitarianism? I'm not sure. And I'm confused as to why we can't discuss our options that are on the table that our founding fathers left for us. I'm perplexed by this. And they talk about January 6th as an armed insurrection. There wasn't even anything close to that. Right. The power is ours, and it's going to get nasty. I mean, we have to talk about this. Honestly, these are our options. My options of getting up every morning to lose my money, to take home less than 50% of my pay, and to watch what's happening and me struggle and us struggle as Americans. Where is our relief for the American taxpayer? Where is Saudi Arabia and all these rich countries donating to us? Where is our help at? Why are we just giving our country away and we're just sitting here silent? I'm confused because the anger is growing, my friend. I mean, that's just, we can't deny that. I mean, we've seen that January 6th, and that wasn't even anger. That was just more of a show of strength, okay, in my opinion.
Well,
but we're getting down to that nitty-gritty, it feels like.
And there's an interesting contradiction that has been put forth by the administration in the context of what you're talking about and sort of riding the edge of there regarding what the founders noted in terms of, hey, the people's right, if you will, to overthrow the government. And on one hand, you have that mocked by Biden. He's mocked it on numerous occasions whenever there is discussion about the true intent behind the Second Amendment. Biden has, upon occasion, he's mocked that idea that, the government has, fighter jets and all of these things that there's no way that the Second Amendment could ever in any way, shape, or form actually protect you from a tyrannical government. So on one hand, he mocks that notion, but on the other hand, talks about how close on January 6th, people who were unarmed came to overthrowing our government and ending everything. And so that contradiction there is something that is on the surface. Yeah, another contradiction that exists, and before we go to the traffic, I'll throw it out there just for people to think about. People recognize, and I think people who agree with someone like James, that you start to get nervous when you start talking about that stuff, riding the edge of it, because like, well, I've seen what they've done to other people. People who just prayed in the Capitol on January 6th, throw them in prison. So talking about or even suggesting, referencing the founders and their acknowledgement of a need for the people to be able to overthrow a tyrannical government. But at the same time, you have people that just in the last 24 hours, many last night, outside police stations in New York City calling for the overthrow of our government. There are college campuses that are filled with individuals calling for the complete destruction of the United States of America. We played audio in Dearborn, Michigan of an event a couple of weeks ago in which at an official event, I believe it was in the Illinois district, calling for not just the destruction of Israel and not just the overthrowing of certain aspects of our government, but completely destroying our government. And the left will tell you, well, that's freedom of speech. Yeah, we may not like it. We may condemn it. But if you are to talk about overthrowing the government in the context of a perspective from somebody like James, well, that's a domestic terrorist. And I don't think it should go unnoticed that in this country, the people in charge currently seem to have ultimately no problem in terms of national security with people, many of which aren't even Americans. They're students from overseas here in the United States calling for intifada, calling for the overthrowing of our government. And, well, freedom of speech, they're allowed to say that, nothing we can do about it. But, boy, you get a 1776 tattoo and you are on a list. James, thanks for the call. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. And continuing on with the media's attempt to market Joe Biden as reelectable, Michael Douglas, who's out, he's got a show on Apple. I think he plays Benjamin Franklin. And so he's doing the rounds. And, of course, they have to ask, you're about Joe Biden's age and everything. And but people say he's just too old and he's not that sharp. Somebody his age, how do you feel about that?
Well, I think that I walk a little similar to him. And the people that I've talked to and everybody that I have say he's as sharp as a tack. He's fine. We all have an issue with memories. As we get older, we forget names, something. He's overcome a stutter.
Oh, hey, overcame a stutter. So The Joe Biden that we continue to be told exists. This is President Snuffleupagus. Snuffleupagus, only Big Bird saw. No, trust me, he exists. Behind closed doors, I see him all the time. Yet nobody else had the privilege of seeing him. I mean, eventually,
I wish they'd tell the truth about his actual sharpness.
I-
He's as sharp as a spoon.
I mean, it's as sharp as a marble, of which half he's lost. It's just, honestly, it is beneficial for the Trump campaign at this point for them to continue to do this. Because once again, you'd think the fact that SNL has mocked them for this when it so clearly isn't true would have been a signal to them, maybe we should stop doing this because we're being made fun of at this point. Simply because it is such an absurd notion for them to continue. And it's the exact same verbiage over and over again. It's always the same. Everyone that he talks to, I mean, just he's sharp as a tack. Again, why the campaign has made the strategic decision to hide that from the rest of the world is something that just, it's part of a master plan that you and I evidently just cannot even begin to comprehend. We've got news in 60 seconds more in the second hour. I'm Nick Reed. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, all of your home buying needs, your home selling needs. If you want not only the best, but just, an all-around great gal, you want Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. You may find yourself in that situation where you got to sell your home in order to buy the next one. You can read reviews about how she helps navigate through, and she does so much more. If you're going to gauge it, you look at what the average realtor does for you. It's like 90% more than that is what you get with Emily Johnson. And you can read specific scenarios. Go read her different reviews. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty on Facebook. And then she's got sort of a Zillow page off of that. You can read the detailed reviews of the experiences people had. And what you may find, it's not just, she was great, she was fantastic, helped us sell our home in record time. But some of the details, you're like, oh, wow, I didn't even know a realtor would do that. Well, most don't. But that's what you get with Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. There's a couple of text messages that came in after James from Springfield called in, and James from Springfield's ultimate sentiment was one that many of you responded in agreement with, and that is, it just feels like it doesn't matter anymore. I mean, if we live in a country where the political party in charge can brazenly do what they're doing, try to imprison political opposition, and not just the primary opponent, but citizens. I mean, you see it with pro-lifers versus pro-choicers. You see it with January 6ers versus those who, just recently, in the last few weeks, have stormed the Capitol over, over what's going on in Israel and demands of complying with Hamas. The vastly different treatment that occurs. If you had a bunch of MAGA hat-wearing conservatives that were calling for the destruction of this country in the same way these college students are in the name of Hamas, they would be rounded up and put in prison. Their homes would be swatted. Merrick Garland would have a press conference about the dangers of homegrown domestic terrorism. And when the average American sees that, it makes one, when the rules are out the window, when the Constitution's irrelevant, it does make a person go, well, can I even make a difference? I actually, at happy hour, had a gal come up and ask that question to me, saying, listen, I know that we talk about, all right, getting together, get out and vote and do this and do that, but none of that matters anymore. So what do we do? This is, this is the point of hopelessness that so many people, good people, have gotten to. And whenever the good people give up because they see that it seemingly doesn't make a difference, that void gets filled by the bad people, the people that we see on the college campuses today calling for the elimination of the Jews in Israel and the country. And then, of course, they're treated with kid gloves. You have Ocasio-Cortez out there saying, oh, no, they're all peaceful, it's fine. Joe Biden yesterday, he criticizing people who don't understand their point of view. Which, by the way, this is being called his both sides moment. We'll get to that coming up. The left tried. They spread a lot of disinformation, falsely claiming that Trump said that, there were good people on both sides, and one of those sides he was talking about were neo-Nazis, when that's not what he was talking about. But Biden yesterday was asked about, these pro-Hamas terrorist-supporting individuals calling for the elimination of Jews in the United States. And he's like, oh, yeah, I condemn that. But I also condemn people who don't understand their perspective. Oh, okay. Actually, it's people like Joe Biden that apparently don't understand their perspective. The people who understand their perspective are the ones that are, noting the real danger here. Reagan, of course, had talked about just being a generation away, freedoms and liberties. And, now everyone's different. I'm a Christian. And so for me, I realize that even if the country comes to an end, and many people argue, and I think in a lot of ways it has. I mean, geographically, yes, we're still there. But the free and fair elections, that's gone as of now. Can we get it back? I don't know. Equal justice, fair justice, those things all are out the window. I mean, it's random. It's not to say that you can't be the recipient of true justice in this country, but at the same time, we allow injustice to occur. We allow for the courts to do what they're doing today. These things are allowable. And so as again, this is me, and some people may say, well, that's just a little warm, cozy blanket, and okay, so be it. But I as a Christian, I think, ultimately what happens here on earth, it doesn't matter. It's how I deal with it. I do know they want us to give up. That is unfortunately sort of the, the catch-22 of it, I guess to some degree. You want to fight them, you don't want to give up, but then you say, what's the point? But they kind of want that at the same time, so you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. That is part of their goal, and I think that's part of the reason that they are so overtly corrupt, is because they want us to give up. They want us to say, what's the point? There is no point. I also know that there are good people, in my assessment, whether it's on a state level, people like Mike Moon fit the bill, as a state senator. On a national level, I personally believe that Congressman Eric Burleson fits this, that they are on our side and up there fighting for what is good and what's right. Unfortunately, the party leadership in the Republican Party isn't much different than Democrat leadership when it comes to liberties and freedoms and so forth. I do feel, I suppose to some degree, I have an obligation to stay in the fight because of people like Burleson and Mike Moon, and there are others as well. Jim Jordan, you see some of these people on a national level. So I think, man, they're up there. They have to be in it. Can you imagine that frustration? You and I get frustrated. They have to come face to face with these people, but they keep it up. They keep at it, and I get myself feeling like, well, what right do I have to give up if I want somebody to get up there and fight for me, and then there are people up there getting up there and they're fighting for me, and even though they're losing, they keep at it, and I think, what kind of person am I if I just give up then? And I know it's not wrong, though, to then say, but it doesn't seem to be making any difference, huh? Sometimes you do what's right because it's right, not because you think you're going to win. I know none of these answers are maybe even answers, and they aren't satisfying. I'll be honest with you, I've thought about this for some time in the context of my career. I believe one of the reasons that talk radio, for the longest time, I could tell you as somebody that was just a listener of it for years, it was satisfying because I felt as if I was hearing information that if other people heard it like I did, that it would make a difference, right? I would look at the 104th Congress, that there were these meaningful changes made. They may not have been perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not claiming that the Newt Gingrich contract with America was the end-all, be-all. But there were differences that were made. And so there was the satisfaction and the hope of getting information through talk radio that you weren't getting elsewhere, because you thought other people are hearing this as well. And the more people that hear this information, the more they're going to go, oh, I didn't know that. But we're at a point now where there's so many people in this country that don't care, and that it is so corrupt, and they don't care about the truth. And one entire political party doesn't care about the truth. Not that, again, the Republican Party, certainly, particularly with leadership, has its problems. And so the satisfaction of listening to talk radio in the context of, okay, here the information's getting out there, this is making a difference, that, I think to a large degree is no longer a component. I guess if you give up, then you guarantee you won't win. And I wish there were some easy answer as to, okay, well, what do we do? Listen, there are, I think, answers, but they're not easy answers. There are answers like we got to start at the very bottom of the bank. I think we got to start with school boards, and that's a huge. I mean, I'm telling you, so many of these problems we're seeing. It is taking kids at a very young age, stripping from them ethics, stripping from them morality. When you have students who feel that it's virtuous to have other people pay their student and that may not seem like that big of a deal to a lot of people. Well, sure. I mean, who wouldn't want it? There was a day and a time where people who wrote on a piece of paper, I make this agreement with you, they would do it. There was a point in this country where a handshake did that. Hell or high water. No matter how hard it was, I would stick by my commitment because that's who I am. That's my word. We have shifted from that to one political party and millions of young people thinking that it's virtuous to break your word and to force someone else to take up the financial commitment you made. When you sap dignity from people to that extent, you're going to end up with a country like we are ending up with. And it starts at that very, very basic level within the schools. And I think right now there are no more important elections than school boards. And then after that, your state rep, your state senator, and up from there. It really does. And it's not a fast, easy answer. I think that if Donald Trump's election showed us anything, that changing, no matter how drastic the person at the top is, when you have the roots that are so deep and so corrupt, ultimately that ship's going to continue moving in the direction that it does. We got to get a news update, and then traffic, weather as well. I'm Nick Reed. First Alert Forecast sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. From Color 10 Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. 30% chance of rain this afternoon, otherwise partly cloudy, high near 75. Tonight, clouds 47, 71, and Thursday, a 70% chance of showers and storms, cloudy, high near 65. I do want to hit some of your text messages in the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line regarding some of the discussion that we've been having. Got some great text messages in there. So that will be next, and of course, much more. I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. I don't think it's necessarily the party that's in charge. Look at the House. Republicans are supposed to be in charge there. It's become a totally corrupt system of Republicans and Democrats working together as a uniparty. Uniparty is a term that was used by Congressman Burleson yesterday. And this is where so much of the hopelessness comes into place, particularly for Republican voters. And it's a moment of clarity to really get a sense of the lack of either understanding or caring by Republican leadership when they continue to try to blame Donald Trump for eroding support of the Republican Party when it does occur. If it weren't for Donald Trump, I don't know that Republicans would win much of anything right now, other than when you do have Republicans that are fighting against the uniparty. Because for people who want smaller government, less spending, we want a government that doesn't have the ability to spy on us. And we see what has been occurring in Congress under the leadership of the Republicans with the Democrats. And I've asked the question before, and I'll ask it again. Who are we? Who represents us? Who are we supposed to support? Even when it comes to the economy, the biggest driver of the economic problems that we're having right now is spending. Well, who over the last couple of years continues to hand Joe Biden the checks? It's the Republican leadership. I mean, to some degree, clearly do not want Joe Biden to get reelected president. I just can't even imagine what 4 more years of that devastation will look like with this country. But when some of these establishment Republicans run around talking about, this Bidenflation. He can only sign the checks that are handed to him. And that massive amount of spending is not slowing down. For the American who wants things to get better, who wants to get away from the socialized medicine, the spending, all of these problems, and looking out for other countries first. The billions of dollars you and I are now going to be forced to pay to secure a border of a foreign country while we let ours wide open. I mean, it's as if these people, they don't even represent the United States any longer. So who do we vote for? What party represents us? And when the Republican Party is wringing its hands and using Trump as a scapegoat, I don't know how much of that is willful denial as to what's going on and how much of that they've convinced themselves. But I can tell you, just being me and talking to the people I talk to, people that aren't even necessarily politically active, that this is, the problem that the Republican Party has is the establishment within the Republican Party. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Before we get a traffic update, okay, love the show. I really like that guy that called in. I think what he was talking about was something I don't want to see happen, but it might have to happen to take back our country if Biden and the Dems win this year, referencing, was it from Springfield? James, was that his name, who called earlier? James was pretty much saying that somebody frustrated and the Republican Party, at least being run by those who are not doing what it is that they say they're going to do. What are we supposed to do any longer? And not just that, but just all the corruption and the clear rigging of elections. What are we supposed to do? Let's see, another saying we need concerted prayer, concentrated prayer, organized times to gather, pray from home, repentance, supplication. We keep our faith. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Another noting that the Bible says, fight the good fight. We know how the world will continue to be more evil. And with all the understandable helplessness, maybe we can discuss convention of states again. That process and education is a solution. Every one of these issues stems from the federal government operating in areas where it has no constitutional authority. These decisions are supposed to be made at the state and local levels. There's only one peaceful and constitutional way to take these decisions back, and that is the Article 5 Convention of State process. And I think even maybe logistically, yeah, I agree with that. The hard thing about all this that I've really come to believe, and this is for any society, it depends on whether that's good. You're talking about good people or not. I mean, any organization. What's the difference between an organization filled with bad people versus an organization filled with good people? You're going to have a good organization versus a bad one. And if you have a country that increasingly is filled with and run by bad people, you're going to get a bad country. And that may seem overly simplistic, but I think there's a great deal of truth to that, and the founders in their writings and quotes you can find that were attributed to them seem to have felt that way greatly as well. Springfield's Talk 104.1 traffic update. First Alert Forecast, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color 10 Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. 30% chance of afternoon rain, high of 75 for the day, 47 tonight. Partly sunny, 71 tomorrow and Thursday. 70% chance of showers and thunderstorms, otherwise cloudy, high near 65. Sarah Myers.
Thank you. Well, if you're out there looking for a new gun shop that's always adding and updating inventory, you have definitely found it with Quick Draw Gun in Monette. And not only that, but they have amazing customer service as well. But back to that inventory, they just got a brand new shipment in from Benally. So if you are been in the market for Benally firearms, Quick Draw Gun in Monette has quite a few options to choose from. And of course, they can always help you out with ammo restocks, scope mounting, minor gunsmithing, and their custom laser engraving and Cerakoting services as well. Highly recommend them. That is who I used to purchase my first ever firearm. They're a great shop, easy to find, just a straight shot down 60, about an hour away. Now, in the meantime, if you have any questions or maybe you're out there looking for something specific, go ahead and give Brad and his team a call today. You can find all of that contact information plus shop hours, store address. All of that information is going to be housed under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
All right, let's see here. I've got a couple of other stories I want to share, but I feel like it's been kind of a downer of a show. One of hopelessness. Well, anyway, I guess that's my answer to that. But this is important, and Trump has noted that if they can do what they're doing to me in New York, they can do this to anyone, right? And a lot of other people have expressed that sentiment as well. I think the average American, though, does not really necessarily comprehend it like so much of what's going on. Like, intellectually, you know that they'll do these things, but you still cannot believe they're actually doing these things. And whenever it is noted that if they can do to Trump, with all of his wealth and the ability to draw attention, to see the injustice, then they can do it to you. I believe that many people still think of that in some sort of political context. It isn't, though. And this following story is an illustration of what those who have warned about a party or a state that's run solely by the Democrat Party and that has become unafraid of being overtly political and corrupt. A Brooklyn man has been convicted of 13 weapons charges after having been arrested and charged in 2022 for building his own firearms. Dexter Taylor's ordeal could become a landmark Second Amendment case in light of the Bruin ruling handed down in the same year. Now, you said this guy was actually on James Clary's show. Is that correct?
Yeah, he was in, I think it was back in February, and he was talking about his case. If you want to hear that podcast, ksgf.com, click on the clarification podcast and scroll down. I think I have it labeled with his name in it. You'll be able to find it.
Yeah, so I would recommend that you go and you listen to that. You'll get much more background on it.
2/17 is when it aired.
So this guy's 52-year-old, African-American, by the way, New York native, software engineer, and he's kind of sounds like he's, again, he'll, I'm sure, go into more detail on this, but the impression I get from the stories I've read is that he's sort of one of those guys, like a hobbyist guy. And during COVID, particularly in New York, where they essentially imprison people in their own homes, he was looking for things to do. And he's an electronics guy. He's one of those types of people. And so he was just looking for hobbies that he could do, apparently, with a lot of the stuff that he had. And he found out he could do gunsmithing. And so he took up the hobby and thought it was just a fun. It wasn't anything he had ever necessarily done before, but found it to be very fascinating and very fulfilling, particularly given COVID lockdown. It was something that could keep his mind occupied, and he really enjoyed doing. And he became fascinated with this weapons science, and the state came down on him. A joint ATF NYPD task force discovered that he was legally buying parts, them for various companies. So they opened up an investigation that led to a SWAT raid and his arrest. From the beginning of Taylor's trial, it was evident, and this I'm reading to you from Red State, that the court was going to be biased against the defendant, according to his attorney, Varghese, who explained that 2 judges presided over his case before the current judge, Judge Abina Darkay, took over. The judge disrupted Varghese' opening statements multiple times as he tried to set the stage for Taylor's defense. Even further, she admonished the defense to refrain from mentioning the Second Amendment during the trial, telling Red State, the judge told us, don't bring the Second Amendment into the courtroom. It doesn't exist here. So you can't argue the Second Amendment. This is New York. Varghese said he filed the appropriate paperwork to preserve these arguments for appeal, but that judge rejected the arguments. She went out of her way to limit me. During the trial, the prosecutor attempted to paint Taylor as some dangerous, deranged individual who was building dangerous firearms in his basement. In that vein, the prosecution objected to allowing Taylor's family in the courtroom to show support, nor did they allow his upstairs neighbor who knew about Taylor's hobby to testify on his behalf. So here, and it's essentially the way that Trump has been treated, but here's just some citizen, and he wasn't buying anything illegally. He wasn't doing anything that was considered harmful or dangerous to anyone. And here, everything that the state was doing, well, we got to paint this guy as dangerous and scary to his neighbors. And so the defense is like, well, let's bring in some of his neighbors who say he wasn't. Nope, the judge blocks it from happening. And so, again, I would recommend you go back and listen to the full podcast where James Clary interviewed, and his show, of course, airs here on Saturdays, at the podcast version of it at ksgf.com. And the reason that I brought this up is because of the warning and the recognition that we've heard from Trump and that we've heard from others. And that is, if they can, in New York, if Democrats who control the judicial system in New York can do to Trump what they're doing to Trump, no one is safe. And that's what Dexter Taylor found out. The attorney explained that he believed at this point, and this is what, again, they like, well, we're not going to get a fair trial. And this is what Trump world is looking at. There's no way that he's not going to be convicted because it's New York. They get a jury pool that hates Trump. You're talking about New York, a jury pool that hates the Constitution. And then you have a judge that is banning them from providing a defense. Attorney Varghese explained that he believed the only chance of having the case go in his client's favor was through jury nullification, which occurs when members of a jury believe a defendant may have violated a law but decided against prosecuting them because they disagree with the law itself or for other reasons. Judge Darkay attempted to shut that argument down and led the jury to believe that they would face consequences if they did not vote to convict Taylor. In reality, this is not the case. Jury nullification is not illegal, according to Varghese. He added, the judge said, you must vote guilty without saying you must vote guilty. He characterized the judge as the most aggressive prosecutor in the room. On April 16th, when it was almost time for the court to close for the day, the jury returned with a verdict. They found Taylor guilty on all but 2 counts. He was immediately taken into custody. The lawyer described what happened after the verdict was read. When it was read, his mom started to cry in the back, and he said to me, Vino, please comfort my mother. Varghese continued, saying Taylor also turned around to his mother after the jury was done, and he said to his mom, God bless you, Mom. Taylor is scheduled to be sentenced May 13th. It appears Judge Darkay will likely make an example of him, sending a message to others who might consider building their own firearms in New York, according to Varghese, because according to the judge, the Second Amendment does not exist in New York. The battle far from over. Both Taylor and his attorney are committed to fighting the case to the end, even if that means taking it to the Supreme Court. There is a Give, Send, Go campaign helping with his legal fees as well. But this I highlight again because of, this guy doesn't have the money that Trump has. This guy doesn't have the ability to draw attention the way that Trump does. And so, yeah, if the corrupt Democrats who run the judicial system in New York can do to Trump what they're doing to Trump, they can do to this guy or any other citizen. I would not live in New York because you have no rights in New York. Springfield's Talk 104. It's not the only state, but it certainly has been on full display. Unless you're a terrorist calling for the elimination of all Jews and the destruction of the country, then, you got your freedom of speech, you got your freedom of assembly, you got all that. We do have a free breakfast for veterans, our Heroes Breakfast, coming up this Friday. We will be broadcasting as we do every Friday. We weren't last Friday. We were in the Dominican Republic, of course, with so many of you joining us down there as we broadcast from Punta Cana, the TRS Turquesa All-Inclusive. It's hard to believe just a week ago that's where we were doing the show at this
I
time.
know. Boo.
I know. We're going to be doing another one in November,
That's
though.
right.
So
Mark your calendars.
keep listening. We had 67 go. I don't know why I thought we had, because we've had 80 plus before, but and of course you always have some that have to drop off at the
Right.
last minute. Was it 67 is total that we had?
Yeah, it was somewhere around there.
We had join us, and so Friday, Darren Chappell was in studio. But other than those extraordinary events, we're always out at Scramblers on Friday, sponsored by Extra Mile Home Inspection and Real Estate Repair. And this Friday, if you're a veteran, you get free breakfast thanks to Delta Roofing Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, Serenity Honors, and, of course, Scramblers. Senator Bill Eigel joins us this morning, and I'm going to, this isn't necessarily why you called, but we've been having discussions this morning, and we had one caller that spurned a lot of discussion and a lot of text messages in, who has just said he doesn't even know what to do anymore. And we have happy hour once a month, and I had a gal come up to me, and she goes, it just doesn't seem to matter anymore what we do. And they see what's happened in Congress, and they see just the overt corruption, the ability of the political power structure to use the courts in order to try and imprison political opposition. What do you say to people who have kind of given up and think it doesn't really matter what we do? It doesn't matter how much we vote, how much we mobilize, even when Republicans get in charge of Congress, let's say, it still doesn't seem to matter. What do we do? What do you say to those folks?
Yeah. Good morning, Nick. Thanks for having me. I say don't let go now. Don't let go. And I know the temptation is there because, like you said, we see all of these bad things going on around us, and the people of this state have accurately identified that there are a bunch of folks in Washington, D.C., and quite frankly, Jefferson City, that just simply do not care about the things that they're going through. They don't care that the tax burden is higher than it's ever been before. They don't care that we have more government than we ever have before trying to teach our kids bad things, that don't control the invasion that's going on in the border. We have Congress, to your point, that is sending money to a country on the other side of the planet and not doing nearly enough or anything to keep American citizens safe. So yes, with all of these bad things happening, it is easy to allow yourself to get in the mindset of, at what point do we just throw up our hands? My ask of that person or anybody, don't let go now. I have described 2024 as the year that we're going to have a reckoning in this state. And just like Donald J. Trump is winning the country on the idea that Washington, D.C. is overripe for a reckoning from a guy by the name of Donald J. Trump, we're going to have a reckoning here in the state of Missouri, too. For too long, Missouri has been left behind. It's been falling behind the other big red states with bold conservative governors because we have a status quo in Jefferson City. It is a status quo that it's put a tax burden on the state that's higher than it's ever been before. We haven't done anything to address the illegal immigration in our own borders of the state. We haven't done nearly enough to protect the farmland of the state from being bought out by foreign countries. There is a reckoning coming, and I tell you what, nobody has made the swamp in Jefferson City more uncomfortable these past 8 years than I have, and it's because I became in office exactly who I promised I was going to be back in campaign season, fighting for all the things, whether it's getting rid of personal property tax, whether it's defending our rights. It has made me very unpopular in Jefferson City, but that reckoning is going to come on board here in 2024. We're going to take our state back, so don't let go. We are seeing – I have traveled 60,000 miles on my truck in the past 18 months, meeting Republicans and individuals from all over the state who are as disappointed and as frustrated and as angry as the folks that you're talking to. And I got to tell you, my message to them also is you're not alone. If you are one of those folks that are angry and frustrated, you're not alone. There's more folks that are getting engaged in this political discussion than ever before, and we're going to show up this year in August and November, and we're going to make sure Missouri is going to be a leader in this country, regardless of all the silliness that's going on in Washington, D.C., or who's in charge down there in Washington, D.C. Missouri is going to be a leader in this country. We're going to start doing all those big red Republican things that the other states are getting ahead of us and leaving us behind on. This is Missouri's time. Don't let go. You're not alone.
We're talking with Bill Eigel, and he's also running for governor. And I listen oftentimes to sound bites and podcasts, and it's when I listen to a lot of Republican elected officials or people that are part of these lobbyist organizations, many of which portray themselves as conservative, and I don't know, maybe they are. You listen to them, and you would think that Missouri, the things that they're doing, is right up there with Florida and Texas, and it just, to me, it shows the way they pat themselves on the back, and well, this is just such a huge this and that, and I'm thinking it's just so detached from what so many Missourians actually feel. And so I'm going to just ask that, you look at somebody like former Governor Eric Greitens, and Greitens, I think, was clearly not establishment. I also believe that he, without getting too far down the rabbit hole here, I think a lot of the things that he was accused of that led to his demise, I personally believe there was some merit to them. But I also believe that it was used to get him out because he wasn't establishment. I think if he was a good old boy establishment kind of guy, I don't think that stuff would have been used by the establishment to force him out. So that being said, if you are somebody who really genuinely are anti-establishment, you get up there, how is it that you fight against that machinery?
Yeah, well, I tell you what, you got to be comfortable taking all the slings and arrows that are going to come from the swamp, whether it's the Chamber of Commerce, which is a leftist organization these days, all the Missouri Hospital, who they are, they're going to attack you. And quite honestly, they've been attacking me for every year I've been in the Senate. Nobody, like I said, nobody's more unpopular than I am in Jefferson City because of the fact that I'm willing to stand up and bring the Senate to a halt to try to get tax cuts implemented in this state, to try to get some budget control implemented in this state. And, it has been, I don't expect anything different as governor of this state. The difference will be But as governor of the state, I'm just going to be taking those same slings and arrows on behalf of every one of the 6 million people that live in this state. And there is no way that that journey is going to be an easy one, which is why I'm going to need not just folks that will support my message and support me during campaign season. We need to continue to have folks after Election Day is over and can remain engaged with the political discussion, remain engaged with their legislators in Jefferson City. You know, when we operate as the Freedom Caucus, the only reason that the Freedom Caucus is able to have any success whatsoever on the issues that we fight for is because the public agrees with us. And we are able to leverage the public perception and support for our platform of issues to phone calls and messages going to all the softer, the moderate Republicans, the left-leaning Republicans in the Senate chamber, and applying pressure to them. And that creates a mechanism that suddenly things start moving. The movement of the Initiative Petition Reform Bill, which is almost at the finish line right now, is a great example of that. So with a small, determined minority and the power of the public that wants to see these things done, we can accomplish great things. When we are in charge of the governor's mansion, so that means that we're going to be in charge of setting the tone for all the policy going through Jefferson City, of writing a budget that's actually going to get the state back under fiscal control. When we have that same voice that other states like Texas or Florida have right now. I mean, you ask somebody who the governor of Texas or Florida is, and almost every person in this state knows because of the big things that they're doing in those areas. You go down to Texas and Florida and ask folks in those states who the governor of Missouri is. Nobody's ever heard of our governor, and the reason is because we're not doing those big red Republican things. I'm thinking of a Missouri where one day Ron DeSantis or Greg Abbott, they're going to wake up and turn on their TVs, and they're going to say, man, look at all the great things going on in Missouri. How do we be more like the show me state? That's when you know we'll have arrived.
Bill Eigel, appreciate it. So we've got to throw it over to traffic here. Next time you are in the area, please let us know.
You bet, man. Thanks for having me. We'll talk real soon.
All right, sounds good. State Senator Bill Eigel also running for governor in the state of Missouri. This is Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. If you have a home loan need, iwantagreathomeloan.com. That's where you go. From the beginning to the end, you're not going to find any better folks over there. I've used them. So many of you have used them. It's so much more than simply offering you the service of, all right, here's the money, here are the terms, and here's, so forth. But I learned just invaluable information on how it is to control your credit, which is an important thing, even if you aren't wanting to have credit cards and debt and so forth. But there's so much valuable information you can learn. Understanding the system is key one in knowing how to navigate through that system. And that's what you get with iwantagreathomeloan.com, because you do. The show, the tone of the show has been just a little depressed this morning, a large part of it, and the conversation was really largely steered based off of a call. I mean, we began talking this morning about what even Jonathan Turley, who is a Democrat, not a Trump supporter, but he's a constitutional scholar, and he noted that it's just embarrassing what is going on, the overt political nature of the justice system in New York. I mean, it's just it's lawlessness in the name of, quote, law. And we had a caller talking about just the sense of hopelessness. What are we supposed to even do anymore as American citizens who want truth and justice, that it doesn't really seem to matter? And, of course, I'm a Christian, and some people may see it as an easy write-off to be like, well, none of it really matters anyway. But, I think there is some truth to that. But I do at the same time, and I'm a firm believer in this. And I'm going to segue into talking about Wilder RV here, who was, one of our partners. And I know there are some people that just obsess nonstop and very myopic tunnel vision when it comes to this stuff. But it is helpful to step away sometimes. Not from this show, obviously. But, just getting out of the norm, stepping away. And it doesn't mean you have to turn off every bit of information, but watch Seinfeld for a day, or things that aren't political in nature. And of course, one of the ways you can get away, even with television now and satellite and everything else, you see them on top of RVs. It's that living that lifestyle of the RV. When I say lifestyle, it doesn't mean that you have to be full blown 100% into it, but just having the ability to get away, to do something different, and to have that sort of emotional breather. And if it's something you've not done before, but you think, yeah, maybe I could use that, just the ability, even if it's just an hour away, or even in your backyard, you just can't stand your family for the day, and you're like, I just want to go out and be in it. Maybe that's your situation. Wilder RV, they're the place to go. They're the people to talk with. They're great for those who are veteran RVers, and if you've never done it before, just a little over an hour north on 13, Clinton, Missouri. Well worth it. The inventory is fantastic. They don't hover over you. They don't pressure you, but they are there to help you. It's Wilder RV, and you can check them out online. They've got very transparent pricing. They don't jack that pricing up. Financing is much more reasonable than I think a lot of people believe. WilderRV.com, also at KSGF.com under Nick's endorsements. There's been a bit of coverage locally regarding the Springfield City Council discussing multiple agenda items last night, including possibly reestablishing a jail diversion program. I think the terminology of this, for a lot of people, immediate red flags, because it sounds like soft on crime. The terminology sounds like, here, diversion. How do we keep people out of jail? What can we do in order to prevent people from going to jail who should be going to jail? And that is the instinct oftentimes for people. So I was curious about this. And there was a KY3 story, and they noted that Judge Wendy Garrison with the Springfield Municipal Court said, out of the 25 people the court accepted into the diversion program, 19 have passed through successfully. Now, the funding has run out for this, and they're wanting more funding. They're saying, hey, this has been relatively successful. In fact, Springfield has a higher success rate than other communities, yet Springfield lost the funding for it, and so they want more funding back. $98,800 budget adjustment increase to expand on the program. Now, my mind just immediately asks questions, and one, whenever they note that 25 people the court accepted into that diversion program, 19 have passed through successfully. The 6 who haven't, is that because they failed, or they just have yet to complete the program? I don't know the answer to that. That isn't noted here. So that doesn't necessarily mean that those who haven't passed through haven't failed. Maybe they just haven't had the chance to complete it. I don't know the answer to that. Also, when comparing to other communities, do other communities have numbers that are much, much, much higher? Like, well, we had 1,100 go through the program, and of those, this many succeeded. So I don't know if the sampling size is also a fair comparison to other communities, because that's not mentioned here. The news leader also has a piece that's a little more in depth, and they note the Chief Municipal Judge, Wendy Garrison, said the program was a way to connect with people, the resources so the cycle of incarceration could stop, and they could receive the support they need to be successful and stabilize in their life. Quote, because of mental health issues, these individuals often act out. They have frequent contact with police officers. They receive multiple minor citations for charges like trespassing, camping in public, obstructing a city officer. As judges, we like to see, or what we like to see, is do we have a plan to let this person out of jail so that they'll be successful, they won't reoffend, and we won't be seeing them again in court, hopefully. So it sounds as if the program targets mostly those people that might be considered an annoyance, as opposed to somebody that is an actual danger. How the program works, after a judge referred individuals to the program, a community health worker created a customized assessment and plan that was agreed upon by the prosecuting attorney, probation officer, and other players. Garrison said the individual could then enter a plea of guilty to be released on probation for up to 2 years under the agreement. They would follow the plan that had been created. In the first couple of months, Assistant Director of Health, Rhonda Davis, said touch points with the community health advocate would be frequent and intense to ensure the individual received all they needed. As time went on, that guidance and supervision could ease as the person regained stability. Beyond the community health advocate's work, the probation officer provided guidance and support in following the outline plan as well. That support and guidance is vital for those who may not have family or for whom mental health issues make it difficult to carry out the plan on their own, Garrison said, quote, what we look at as success for these individuals is the program is that they have no new charges, that they can maintain their independence or their interdependence, and that they have also continued engagement in community resources. So essentially, what we want to see is that they're no longer homeless, that they're addressing any of their needs, and that gives them the opportunity to become in the habit of that continued success. At the end of the probation period, if the person successfully completed the program, their plea of guilty and the charges on their record could be dismissed. The graduates were also recognized. Then the absence of criminal conviction can yield long-term benefits for those individuals in relationship to future employment opportunities, and then also avoiding social stigma. And I'd actually sent a message to the judge asking some more details on it, and then Cora Scott had responded, the Director of Public Information and Civic Engagement, saying successful completion is completion of the plan created by the community health advocate following the conditions of probation and lack of recidivism. And I asked if those plans were accessible to the public. What can we see those? Because I'm you have success, you have defining success, but then what does that definition look like? And I believe that there are instances and the ability to at times create programs that do decrease with a certain segment of the population the likelihood that they will become repeat offenders. Just the information that's out there now, I don't know if this happens to be one of those. Clearly they feel that it is. And then is the dollar amount worth on the return? Oftentimes we take this position, particularly in government, that, it doesn't matter how much money, if it saves one life sort of thing. Well, that's nice to say, but it's not necessarily realistic. And having some sort of analysis as that cost versus, okay, what is if they are not steered out of the repetitive nature of their behavior, what would that cost be? And an analysis as to whether or not this could be presented as actually saving money. In other words, okay, yeah, it cost this much to have a person go through the program, but if they are successful, then that means they're not going to be going through the system costing tax dollars. I think there's just a lot of analysis that could be done, and maybe it has been done. It's just too deep to necessarily get into an article. So anyway, I thought, because a lot of people are talking about it, and on the surface, oftentimes those can be seen as just ways to provide excuses to keep people out of jail. That doesn't necessarily appear to be the case, though. Is it something that ultimately is meaningful in a beneficial way? I don't know. I'm not sure. So I provided you with a lot of information to in the end say, I don't really know. Latest news update. First alert forecast sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. 30% chance of rain today, mainly afternoon. Otherwise, partly cloudy, high near 75 tonight, clouds 47, 71 tomorrow, and Thursday a 70% chance of showers and storms. Otherwise, cloudy with a high near 65. It's clearly going to be dismissed by the media, but Joe Biden has created for himself a legitimate very fine people moment. Now, that very fine people moment was a disinformation campaign that was largely successful by the media and the Democrats to claim that Donald Trump said that Nazis were very fine people. This was in the context of the Charlottesville and all of this. And there was within that the discussion. This was a period of time that left-wingers were demanding statues come down of individuals that were part of a history that are, sordid and connections to slavery, racism, among other things. And there were many people, and by the way, this is not unique to the United States. The rest of the world feels this way, other than the Taliban, that, you leave up, if these are part of your history, you leave them up because it's part of who you are, scars and all, the good and the bad. You don't cleanse your history. And Donald Trump was talking about how there are very fine people when it comes to the issue of should statues remain where they are, or should they be eliminated altogether, or should they be put in museums, that on both sides of that issue you have very fine people. Well, that was used in order to spread the disinformation that he said Nazis were very fine people. Joe Biden was asked about, well, I'll just play the audio for you, about the increasingly prevalent number of left-wing activists that are calling for the elimination of Jews, the destruction of the United States of America, and whether he condemned that along with anti-Semitism. All right, and if you couldn't hear him very well at the end, he was actually mumbling. He trailed off. So he was asked if he condemned the anti-Semitism, and he said, yeah, but then the important part, of course, he condemned those who don't understand where they're coming from. So ultimately, he used that as a launching point to wag his finger at us that don't sympathize and understand the perspective of those who want the elimination of Jews, who want the destruction of the United States of America. The visuals that many Americans are waking up to, not solely the anti-Semitic protests at universities like Columbia and Harvard, but there were numerous arrests made at Harvard. And you had it looked like a Middle Eastern country. You see the visuals overnight of the anti-American pro-terrorist organizers calling for intifada openly, calling for the destruction of this country. In the streets of America, this is the America that has been delivered to us by this administration. And not just this administration, but this is DEI. And before I get to that, because that is ultimately such a major and important point here, we don't have time for it this morning. Maybe you've seen the video or the audio. There was a Jewish professor who went in order to scan himself in, and there's video of all this, at Columbia University with his card. His card had been deactivated in order to, quote, protect him. Now, he just demanded to be able to go where the anti-Semitic, pro-terrorist, pro-Hamas students were allowed to go. And he was told no by the university, by the COO of the university, all to protect him. Now, it wasn't to protect him. It was ultimately to protect the ability of the Hamas supporters to occupy the campus. See, instead of saying on our campus, where we promote diversity, we're not going to allow people who call for genocide to occupy the campus. They say, no, we're going to allow them, but we'll keep the Jews away so that, you don't get in their way, and because we can't guarantee your protection. Then you should be removed from that position. If you ban Jews from your campus, specifically a Jewish professor, you deactivate his card because your position is, sorry, as COO, as an individual who's responsible for running this campus, I can't guarantee Jews are going to be safe. Maybe you shouldn't be in that position. I think that it is very enlightening, however, and I don't think it should be glossed over, that here you have on left-wing campuses in this country the acknowledgement that they aren't either willing or capable of making sure that Jews are safe. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. KSGF.com coming up Friday, 10 a.m. Half price deal for $25. You can get a $50 gift certificate to Scramblers. That'll be 10 a.m. Friday at KSGF.com. Also, while you are at KSGF.com, you can get registered to win tickets to see Casting Crowns with special guest Katie Nicole at the Black Oak Amphitheater. That performance is going to be Thursday, September 12th. Ex-CNN anchor bringing her sons to Israel, where she says they will be safer than in New York City. This is a former CNN host. Campbell Brown declared Sunday she is heading to Israel with her sons, arguing that the embattled country, is currently more welcoming to her Jewish family than New York City. Her anti-Semitism protests have roiled Columbia University, where you still have Democrats claiming that they're peaceful. You have Senator Hawley demanding Biden send National Guard to protect Jewish students at colleges. Don't hold your breath. I mean, when this is an administration, not that Hawley's wrong for calling for this. This is an administration that continues to lobby on behalf of Hamas in Israel. We really think that they're going to send in the National Guard to protect Jews here in the United States? Ron DeSantis noting foreign students engaging in anti-Semitic protests should have their visas canceled. Of course, you want to talk about not learning the lessons of 9/11? I mean, that whole never forget thing, what a joke. When we look back on 9/11 and the warning signs, they weren't on full display. I mean, the warning signs were, well, they got pulled over here and their visas were expired and we probably should have, they were going to flight school and they didn't seem interested in landing planes. And so the observable behavior that was a little bit mysterious was afforded to maybe a handful of people. Well, we got to make sure that we never miss the warning signs again. You have thousands of suicide bomber-aged individuals in this country on college campuses and outside the New York City Police Department last night calling for the destruction of this country. I'm like, oh, well, what are you going to do? What a joke. The idea that we would learn the lessons of 9/11 and learn to not ignore the warning signs. Incidentally, Daily Caller is reporting that Columbia faculty orchestrated a walkout on behalf of the pro-Hamas students who are calling for genocide of the Jews. Well, isn't that nice? What a prestigious university. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. First Alert Forecast, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. From Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, 30% chance of rain, mainly after 4 or 3 this afternoon. Otherwise, partly cloudy, a high near 75 for the day. Tonight, clouds 47, sunny 71 tomorrow, partly sunny, that is. And then a 70% chance of showers and thunderstorms developing on Thursday. Otherwise, cloudy with a high near 65. Streaming live, KSGF.com. We are also, of course, on YouTube. You can watch us there thanks to Springfield Wraps, who also designed the KSGF studio. We talked with a number of people throughout the state a few months ago that were a number of them with central committees. And this was in regards to the establishment booting some of the Freedom Caucus members, and there was a sort of battle that had been going on, and so we spent an entire morning actually talking with folks throughout the state who had grave concerns about the direction of things. At the same time that all of that has been going on, we have talked about the efforts of some of the central committees in each of the counties to do a better job of making sure that people who run as Republicans are actually Republicans. What oftentimes happens is you have people who want to run for office, but they're in an area in which the Republican always wins, so they just say they're a Republican when they aren't actually a Republican. And so the remedy that some of these central committees have come up with, and we've talked, Don Carricker in Christian County has talked to great extent about this, is to have a questionnaire of sorts that is provided to the person who wants to run as a Republican in order to make sure that they have Republican values. And there are some who are pushing back on that, saying, no, we should not do that. We should not vet these individuals. Anybody that wants to run as a Republican should be able to run as a Republican, and then it's, up to the voters to do their research and to make a determination as to whether or not that person is actually somebody that holds the Republican ideals. In Vernon County, and one of the folks that we had spoken with in the past, Cynthia Haggard, and she joins us this morning because in Vernon County, which is, for those of you who, if you're on your way to Kansas City from Joplin, it's a bit a ways up there. Nevada is in Vernon County, just to give you an idea. So they are up against the Kansas border. There's a battle that's going on there, and I thought this is a pretty interesting development, and so Cindy is with us this morning. I appreciate you being with us. Vernon County Republican Committee is at battle with the Vernon County Clerk here. Will you explain to us what has occurred and what the battle is at this point?
Sure. Hi, Nick, and thank you for having me on this morning.
You bet.
The battle is between, as you said, the Republican Committee here, the Vernon County Republican Committee, and our county clerk. Basically, there's a statute. It's 115.357, and that statute governs who can file and where they can file, or who they pay, who the candidates pay and where they can file. So it indicates that, for example, state and federal candidates file with the Secretary of State's office, and they pay their filing fees to the state committee treasurer. At the county level, candidates file with the local election authority, and for most of us, that's the county clerk, and they pay their filing fees to the local county committee, to the treasurer of that committee. The problem we're having in Vernon County is that Section 2 of the statute indicates that the candidate has an option to hand the clerk the check rather than to give it directly to our treasurer. The clerk is then obligated by statute to promptly forward that fee on over to us. The statute says that until the fee is given to the appropriate or accepted by the appropriate county treasurer, the candidate cannot file their candidacy. And it says until that fee has been paid, they can't be on the ballot. So we have court rulings. Miller versus Carnahan is the 2006 one involving Carnahan here in Missouri, the Secretary of State at the time, Robin Carnahan, and a Ku Klux Klan member named Miller who wanted to file with the Democrat Party. The party rejected his fee. Secretary of State's office said they couldn't accept the candidacy because of that. It went to court, and the court agreed with the Secretary of State's office and said that the function of the clerk is administrative in taking that fee. They cannot accept it on behalf of the party. So if we look at the county clerk, that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to accept that fee on behalf of the party. They're sending the fee on to us. The checks are made payable to us, but they are acting as if it has already been accepted by also filing the candidacy of the person at the same time. And the problem with that is the party never has an opportunity to say yes or no. So we had candidates who...
No, okay, please go ahead. No, I was going to ask you, clearly, I imagine this is the result of candidates that either, or they wanted to be candidates under the Republican banner that either did not, I suppose, pass the vetting is the right terminology, or refused to go through the vetting. Is that where this conflict is coming about?
Yes.
Right.
The endorsement of the Republican committee. I have a friend who I thought put it very well. She said the VCRC, the individuals named in the suit, did not seek the endorsement of the local Republican committee. They did not pay a filing fee to the local committee. They bypassed the committee entirely. So their candidacy and filing fees were rejected. They can't run as Republicans. And that's really, from the vetting standpoint, that's what it amounts to. They did not go through our rules. We have a court case coming up in May because our real problem is our county clerk is trying to tell us who can be on our ballot. Government is trying to say to a political party, you shall put these individuals on the ballot because we say so. That's such a flagrant violation of our First Amendment rights.
Well, and
clerk...
at the same time, I find this somewhat, it's the theater of the absurd, I suppose, because it wasn't that long ago we watched a number of states try to tell Republicans what presidential candidate they could and could not have on the ballot. That was Donald Trump. And here you're kind of dealing with the reverse situation where they're trying to tell you, force upon you which candidates will be Republican candidates on the ballot.
Exactly. The clerk took the fee and at the same time took the candidacy and cut us out. And she said, well, I had no choice. And so if you want those people off the ballot, then you need to get us a court order. Well, we did that. Okay. On April 8th, she got a court order that very clearly said she was not to put the names on the ballot. And if she had done so, she was to remove them until such time as the Vernon County Republican Committee informed her that we had accepted the filing fee. So on April 8th, she had everything she needed to prevent her from putting those candidates on the ballot as Republicans. They could still file as independents, and they still can today. They have until July 29th. But instead of complying, she's gotten in touch with her attorney, and they're trying to fight it. So we have a May 7th court date because apparently it's okay for government to tell a political party who the approved candidates are, and if the voters don't like that, it's just too bad.
We're talking with Cynthia Haggard in Vernon County, and I want to. I think there's two issues that are related, but they're not the same here. And I kind of want to put it out there and frame it, and then you can tell me if it's accurate or not, because we have long talked about this conflict within the party itself as to whether or not central committees should vet or they should just give the green light for anyone who pays the fee. This, to me, is a different thing. I think that you can believe that I lean towards the idea of vetting right now, of having the central committee do vetting. But even if you believe no, I think that the central committees should not vet. They should allow anyone who wants to. This is a separate issue. This is not a decision that is being made one way or another by a central committee. This is a government entity telling a political party, we're going to decide who gets to run as a Republican as opposed to the Republican Party actually making that decision.
That's exactly. Begin with, they apparently were concerned about whether or not they would make it through the process. I will tell you that out of the almost 300 that we have vetted, only 5 have failed. So, but regardless of how you feel about vetting, This lawsuit is
Yeah.
about government
Yeah, agreed.
telling a political party what they have to do. You're exactly right on that. And the insurance company, by the way, declined to cover it. The county's insurance company is not covering this litigation. So at this point, the county commissioners have decided that they will fund it, which is, I think, fairly appalling. They're spending taxpayer money from our general fund, apparently in agreement that they ought to be able to tell us who our candidates are.
Now I'm gonna play. I'm gonna try to read into, in between some lines here, just based off human behavior and thinking. And if I'm in the shoes of somebody who is the county clerk in this situation, and the party comes to me with all this information, I'd be like, "Oh, that sounds good to me. This is what the law says." It doesn't seem like I would have a vested interest in fighting this unless I had a vested interest in fighting this. So that makes me think, okay, what is really going on here? Now, I know at the same time that the state party there's been this sort of this battle and threaten of lawsuits and so forth going on. Do you think that behind the scenes, be it higher up within the Republican Party or someone else is prompting them to fight this so that it's not the Republican Party fighting itself? Or am I reading something into it that's not there? Yeah.
In the past, our old county clerk, who retired at the end of last year, always sent the candidates to us to go through whatever our rules were, and we would then take their filing fee, give them a receipt, and they would take it to the courthouse. This year, once vetting came into play, and we're doing this not in every county, but statewide, once that came into play, the county clerks went to their county clerk association early last year and came back with essentially marching orders saying they had no choice but to take the fee from the candidate if the candidate wanted to give it to them, which is in the statute. They just never particularly paid attention to it. And then they would have to take the candidacy at the same time, which they're not required to do. They could have said, if you're going to give me the money, I have to give it to the treasurer of the committee and see whether or not they're going to accept you before I can let you file your candidacy. But none of them are doing that. They're taking the candidacy at the same time, and they're making this statement that they just don't have any choice in the matter.
Yeah.
Well, you've always had a choice in the past. And if you talk to the County Clerk Association president, who is, by the way, also the Democrat head of the election board in St. Louis, he will tell you, if you press him on it, that these are independently elected clerks and they can do what they want. And yet they've all been told this is what you should be doing. So who's pulling the strings behind the scenes? I don't know if it's the state committee. I don't know if it's the a campaign committee in Jeff City. I don't know if it's just the county clerks who just don't want to go along with the party's procedures. But it is curious that this is the year they decided to take a stand.
And so again, and this may be somewhat redundant, but I just try to sort of break it down in bite-sized pieces here. Your position, and based off, you cited some legal findings here, is that based off law in Missouri, that a candidate can be put on the ballot once the fee is accepted by the party or the central committee. Now they can, by way of getting it to you, give it to the county clerk, and then the county clerk can deliver it to you. But the green light to actually be on the ballot under a party's banner is for the central committee to have accepted it, not the county clerk. The county clerk can be just sort of a conduit to get there, correct?
That's absolutely right. Our 2006 court ruling says that their function is administrative only. They do not have the authority to accept the fee on behalf of any political party, be it Republican, Democrat, or anything else.
Yeah, and again, people have their own motivations, and sometimes you just sort of get sometimes people are like, well, you're not going to tell me what to do, but it just seems like an awfully odd battle to fight if you're just simply trying to do your job and you're not motivated by political factors, and that makes me think that there are players behind the scenes here.
Yeah. In the courthouse, we have 3 or 4 people who are up for re-election, and they are all resisting getting involved with the party at all. They didn't want to vet. They didn't want to follow the rules that we've set. So instead, they went directly to the county clerk. They gave her the fee. They filed their candidacy immediately. She let them do it. And that was their effort to bypass us and bypass our rules. But the bottom line is, even with that said, the county clerk said, I need a court order to take them off, or to print. The ballots aren't printed for 10 weeks, so they're not technically on a ballot. They didn't magically show up at a ballot on 5:01, at 5:01 p.m. the day filing closed. But she's accepted their candidacy to be on the Republican ballot. The party owns that ballot.
Right.
That's our primary ballot, just like the Democrat ballot belongs to the Democrat Party. And so outside government entities don't have the right to tell us who we put on our ballot. But that's essentially what they did. They went around us, did everything directly with the county clerk. The county clerk then said, well, I can't do anything about that unless you give me a court order. But now, instead of complying, we have an attorney, or she has an attorney, attempting to fight it. We, on the other hand, we have hired Mark McCloskey,
Right.
kind of well known in this state for having defended the First Amendment or the Second Amendment against Kim Gardner. He is defending our First Amendment rights. So, we're fairly excited about that. We're pretty confident about our rights in all of this.
Well, it's definitely interesting for a number of different reasons, and I'm glad to kind of be kept in the loop on this. I appreciate it. And if you don't mind, just shoot me updates, because I would like to continue to keep this out there.
Absolutely. And, we appreciate your interest and your willingness to give us a voice on this. We are asking anyone who is as outraged about the idea of government telling a party who can and cannot be on their ballot, if you're as outraged as we are, we'd love it if you called the commissioners. They're in the office today and tomorrow, and let them know your feelings, because even if you aren't in Vernon County, this is going on all over the state. County clerks are bullying the party. So if we don't stop it here, the same thing's going to happen everywhere else. I know Don Carricker's having the same kinds of issues in his county. There are, any place that we're vetting, we're running into these kinds of roadblocks from county officials who think they have the right to tell us what our rules are.
Cynthia Haggard, Vernon County Republican Committee. Appreciate you being with us this morning.
Thank you. I appreciate it as well.
All right, you bet. Have a great rest of your day. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Hey, thank you. Well, multiple rounds of thunderstorms are expected to roll through the listening area. That's going to start on Thursday, and it's going to go until probably next Monday. Now, if your roof is not ready for this next round of rain, wind, hail, I want to recommend Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, the Pyramid Roofing Company, they're not going to take advantage of you whenever a storm rolls through. They won't use scare tactics. They're not going to try to upsell you or do unnecessary work. They are homeowners too, and they understand that your home is the largest investment, so they want to help you protect your home. And sometimes that protection doesn't necessarily mean a whole new roof, but maybe just a simple roof repair. Whatever your roofing needs, you can trust the Pyramid team. They're going to get you all taken care of. Now, if it is time to schedule that free roof inspection, you can give Josh and his team a call today. You can find all of that contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
There was an aspect of the increasingly not just observable but dangerous anti-Semitism we're seeing amongst left-wing activists. There's a depth to it that I really didn't get to today and probably will tomorrow, but there were a couple of different stories. One, there was a poll done. Nearly half of Gen Z voters are sympathetic towards the terrorist Hamas. It was a survey from Summit.org RMG Research found that about half of Gen Zers sympathize with Hamas, and that's the organization, of course, that wants all Jews eliminated and tortured and beaten and raped and so forth, and did that. They just haven't done the full elimination part yet. That's half. But there's an article a couple years ago written about anti-Semitism, a growing problem among college diversity administrators. And this was well before the October 7th terrorist attacks against Israel. This was a research project that was done that showed that there was a disturbingly high amount of overtly anti-Semitism amongst people that ran DEI offices on college campuses. And I'm telling you, these two things they're not just linked, but it is an absolute marriage. And this is not virtue signaling. I think that is something that I don't even know that there's been the recognition that needs to be recognized at this point. We're so accustomed to seeing young people pitch fit about them. They get on TikTok and it's like outrage of the day. Every day it's a new outrage because they're addicted to outrage, not the cause. So whatever the outrage of the day is, they're on it. And there's a new one that comes along. That's not what this is. This is a deep-seated, fundamental hatred that has been instilled in these people since they were very young. It is not much different than the way that the hatred is instilled in young people in the Middle East. They start with them at a very young age by defining these are the oppressors and these are the oppressed. And we are seeing that increasingly here in the United States. And this is why there were so many people that just were shocked at the level of open anti-Semitism amongst this generation of people. It wasn't shocking to, though, a lot of people who have recognized the danger of DEI in our schools. And we'll probably touch on that more tomorrow, because this is not something that's going to go away like all the other outrage of the hour. This is very long term. Glenn Beck's next. I'm Nick Reed.